Hello everyone, welcome to the Killer Countdown, where I rank all my favorite kills and all of your favorite horror movies and franchises. My name is Rashawn Bass, and today we're going to be taking a look at Freddy vs. Jason, which was released in 2003 and directed by Ronnie Yu. This installment has a total of 18 kills, but before I get to my official rankings, let me go over the victims I will not be including. First up is the security guard who was just smashed with a heavy door, and then we have the 5 ravers. This sequence was a bit over the top for me. The quick machete slashes didn't really do it for me either, but the over the top blood, and some of them were very questionable deaths to begin with. Now with a total of 6 omissions, here are my top 12 kills in Freddy vs. Jason. At number 12 is Kia, who was hit and smashed into a tree. She makes the save by distracting Freddy by making fun of his, and I quote, Christmas sweater and butter knives, and also takes some verbal jabs by emasculating him and saying,
you got these teensy-weensy little things, and Jason has got this big old thing like...
Freddy signals Kia to basically check her rearview mirror. She turns and gets smacked through the air and is sent to elementary school. Get it? Like, elementary school?
That was easy.
At number 11 is Deputy Stubbs, who is electrocuted. There are many reasons why I love this. For starters, I like the creativity of it. The electric current passing through Jason's body into Deputy Stubbs, which is a series first. The makeup effects are pretty damn good as well, but my favorite thing has to be Lenderman's screams. At places 10 and 9 are Blake and his dad. We start off in Blake's dream and he's investigating some movement in the bushes, and oh my fucking god, Freddy's here. He enters the Shadow Realm to try and claim his first victim, but he's
not strong enough yet.
Blake wakes up spooked, then he tries to get his dad's attention, but his head just pops off, spewing blood all over the place. Before Blake can process anything, Jason slashes him and blood splatters the window. At places 8 and 7 are Shaq and his friend, and yes, we're gonna have quite a few group deaths here. They're at a rave having a good time, and his friend discovers Jason standing behind them, and they say some shit.
Well, hey, Jethro! This is a rave, not a Halloween party! Why don't you go find yourself a pig to fuck?
Just, yeah, roll with it. He twists his head 180 degrees Fahrenheit, pushes him down. That's when Shaq plays Jason his mixtape. He goes up in flames and the chase is officially on. Accompanied by choppy slow motion shots, and I really like the overhead shot of the field. I didn't know Jason was such a trailblazer.
That was easy.
Eventually Shaq makes it back, but Jason's machete has something to say about that. You know what? Apparently, this script was written by Dr. Seuss himself. The flaming machete stabs him through the back, capping off one of the more interesting moments in the film. Number 6 is Mark, whose face was slashed and his back set on fire. He was at home reminiscing about his brother, who the news said commit suicide, but in reality it was Freddy. He's hearing the bathtub run, but once he sees it's a hallucination, he goes to take some wake aid. Once he closes the mirror, he sees Freddy and shit gets out of hand. He's seeing his dead brother and is being screwed around with by Freddy. Failing to convince himself that this isn't all real, he finally pleads, "Somebody please wake me up! Please!" Freddy wants Mark to deliver a message verbally, but since he declines,
I'll have to pass that message myself, won't I?
His face is slashed and, well, message received. Starting on my top 5. And 4, yeah, I know, another group death. What the fuck you want me to do about it? Is Gibbs and Frizzell, or the dude with the glow sticks and shit. Gibbs is drunk as fuck and wandering around the cornfield, but in reality, she's actually passed out being face raped by glow stick dude. She's having visions of her dead boyfriend Trey and ends up following him into a barn, which ends up being a boiler room, and here's where the fun begins. There's a suspenseful cat and mouse game, and here's where we see Freddy in his element.
The only thing to fear is fear himself.
She hilariously falls and Freddy's all like,
Oh.
She hides in a locker, Freddy rips the door off, but before he could finish her off, blood splatters onto him because Jason impaled them both and set Frizzell off like a shooting star.
No! She's mine! Mine! Mine!
Now, Freddy, you know sharing is caring. unless it's herpes. Starting out my top 3 is Lenderman, who was impaled on a shelf hook and bled out. He was the first nerdy character that was actually memorable and is one of my favorite characters in a movie. He was constantly torn down by Kia anytime he would try to talk to Laurie. She would give him a verbal beatdown until he decided he had enough.
You know what, Kia? I used to think you hated me because you thought I wasn't good enough for Laurie. But that's not it. See, you tear me down to make yourself feel better because you really hate yourself, which is kind of pathetic when you actually stop and think about it, assuming, of course, you can think, with all that makeup weighing down your head.
Which sets up a pretty captivating moment between them when he attempts to protect Kia from Jason, which ultimately leads to the moment where he gets impaled. She eventually drags him to safety where they share their final moment.
Jesus, Lenderman, you're really hurt.
No. Don't worry about me, just a scratch. Just go get help, okay?
What?
Okay, I'm just gonna rest here a minute.
Lenderman,
I'm fine, Kia. Really, no, get out of here, go get help.
But you...
Just go.
Okay, but I'm gonna be back as soon as I can.
Kia runs off to help and Lenderman bleeds out and dies. This entire dynamic didn't hit me until I did the ranking process, and I actually was going to leave him off the list, but I reconsidered it since he was one of my favorite characters, and I'm glad I did. In at number 2 is Trey, who was stabbed in the back multiple times and bent backwards. This is one of the only moments where Jason actually showed some kind of personality aside from just standing there and slashing people with a machete. Downfall is, this was the first kill of the movie, and Ken Kirzinger's portrayal of Jason was bland and pretty much non-existent. That was my biggest issue of the movie. Jason had the most kills, but this feels more like a Nightmare on Elm Street instead of a Friday the 13th installment. There's tons of creativity on Freddy's part with the dream sequences and effects, but there was nothing put onto Jason's plate other than a body count filler. Not to take anything away from the kill, but this is my biggest gripe. If they showcased this aggressive freak of nature in more parts of the movie, I wouldn't have been harping on the negatives about the direction and performance. I feel like there may be other versions of Jason's that would have fit perfectly for this movie. And claiming my number 1 spot has to go to Freiberg, who was cut in half. They're at a psych ward to get dream suppressant medication, and that's when he decides to spark one up. And then we have this Freddy Krueger worm thing that pulls out a bong and, like a Beyblade, he lets it rip. Eventually, he ends up getting possessed by it when it jumps down his throat. So the possessed Freiberg fills 2 syringes with tranquilizers in order to put Jason down since he's being a bad dog. Jason busts down the door and that's when he's injected. Just before Jason delivers the final blow, Freddy somehow leaves and Freiberg gets completely decimated the moment he snapped out of it. I love the absolute brutality and how graphic it was. Oh look, there are plenty of stoner characters in this franchise, but Freiberg is easily one of my favorites because he was just downright hilarious. We have the scene where they're actually trying to discuss a plan against Freddy and Jason. Laurie ends up falling asleep to be greeted by Freddy. She's screaming and finally gets woken up, realizes she pulled his ear off and it transferred over to the real world. The discussion is capped off with an inspirational quote.
I pulled that out of my dream.
How is that possible? Anything is possible now. God, you just don't get it.
I don't know about you, but I definitely found that to be one of the funniest things I've heard in this movie. Because he was definitely onto something. He was, but I guess Mary Jane killed too many of his brain cells for him to go on any further. Another favorite of mine is right after Jason killed the people at the rave, which is one of the first times they all collectively seen him, so they try to assess what's going on. I found the first half of this movie very boring, so Freiberg was a saving grace with this one line.
Psycho on the hockey mask was real.
Dude, that goalie was pissed about something.
The first half of this movie was such a drag to get through, but once, the ball started rolling, that's when I started having more fun, and then Freiberg, I naturally just gravitated toward Freiberg because, you know what, he was the first one to make me laugh, so I latched onto his character a lot easier. But anyway, here are my official rankings for Freddy vs. Jason. In the comments section below, tell me exactly how you'll rank all these kills. Once again, my name is Sean Bass and this is the Killer Countdown. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to join the Killer Countdown clan. Just don't go burning any crosses now.